Welcome to Monkey Chatter. Before we get started, we have to say that while we think we are really smart, we definitely are not doctors, and you should not be taking our advice as medical advice. Everything we say on this show is based on personal experiences, and any guests we have on are not on to help diagnose or treat or cure any disease. Please reach out to your doctor if you have specific medical questions. And now that we're done with kind of the legalese of the show, we want to get on with the fun stuff. So carry on. Let's get down to Monkey Chatter. Welcome to Monkey Chatter. This is Lara. I'm here with Amy and Michelle. And this podcast, we decided to focus on a subject that I believe we chose a little while ago, but we kind of thought it might fit in well with the holiday season, which is going on full blown right now. And our last episode was perfectionism. So we talked about, trying to let go sometimes of toxic perfectionistic traits in order to have better mental health and better relationships. So today we chose, and I don't know where this name quite came from, but our official title is Not My Circus, Not My Monkeys, aka Letting Go of Things That Don't Matter. Or, in my definition, don't sweat the small stuff. So that's where we are. So I guess we should just do maybe a little round robin of what does that mean to each of us. And who wants to start? Maybe Amy?
I don't know. Why we gotta start with you? Let's do age, Michelle.
Age?
Age before beauty. Thanks, you guys. Yeah, I get it. It's all right. I'm gonna just let go of that. Yes. Okay. Yeah. We know. Stop talking. Stop digging. Stop digging. Yes, I'll start. So Lara, you were talking about, don't sweat the small stuff. And so I have kind of a little different when I heard like letting go, I guess because I'm in the process of thinking about retirement and all of that. I've been taking a reframing retirement course, with the Modern Elder Academy. And which has been super interesting. And I recommend anybody who is going through any transition to check them out, man. They got some really cool stuff and some interesting conversations. So I've been really thinking about letting go of things you really love and like because, letting go of things like that suck or that don't serve you are kind of, it's a little different conversation, right? Or letting go of things that other people do or say, or things that are going on around you.
That's healthy to try to do that, right?
Right. But this is a little different. This is a bit of a conversation around when your life is changing, right? In some way, and you can't take everything with you. And you can't take all those people, all the people, all the things, all the things that maybe made you really productive and successful and whatever in the one space are just not things you want to take with you into the next space, right? So I've been really thinking a lot about that, how to let go of. So of course, when they're talking about retirement, and I guess this would be for anybody switching careers, is how to let go of that identity that is tied to that job or that career or that industry, especially if you're making a big pivot, right? If you're trying to do something completely different. And I just listened to a really cool interview, and I can't remember the guy's name, of course, but he was talking about, how these opportunities had come to him. He had started out with like one job, one career, and got approached to be like in a state, I think it was a state senate kind of thing. And he had never thought about doing that, or, it was never anything, it wasn't like he planned it, right? So, but having to let go also of the quote unquote plan you have for your life for what sort of appears, and taking advantage of opportunities. So, I've really been thinking about letting go in a very different way than before. So that's what's top of mind for me right now is how to gracefully and consciously let go of or release things that you're just moving on from, right? Like
So that's
yeah, right? Like athletes who are, their career is done a lot of the times, like top athletes when they're in their 30s.
yeah, or they
And
have an injury. Yeah.
yeah, how do you let go of or my Pilates instructor for years was a ballerina, like,
Mm.
you know, hardcore, like traveling the world, and she had an accident, right? And so letting go of who you thought you were gonna be, right? Because I don't know. Anyway, so that's sort of been top of mind. Like, how do you gracefully, consciously let go of things that you love or that you were connected to in order to let something else happen? Or what wants to, what's that phrase? What wants to happen next,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I
Anyway,
love the idea that you said, which was you are wrapped up in a certain identity based on many times your career. Not for everybody, but a lot of us kind of base our identity on what we do for a living. And in a way, maybe we're lucky. People who get to do that might be lucky because that means it's something that we enjoy and we identify with. And so when it's time for that transition to happen, which I did go through that
I was
myself.
gonna say you're a perfect example for that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. There is some letting go involved. And it's a really interesting thing. And that actually goes well with our other title too, with Not My Circus, Not My Monkey Business. There is every now and then I'll still get a call from somebody who's out of the loop, maybe an old client or like a client who just, wasn't that, you know, close, and they'll leave a message on my voicemail. They'll call and say like, "Hey, I need specs for an ad sent over ASAP," and I'll be like, "Not my circus, not my monkey." No, I'm not rude, but but I'll say like, "Oh yeah, I don't work there anymore, and this, I've changed direction, and this is somebody you're gonna have to deal with somebody else." And then I try to hook them up with the right person. Of course, I'm like I said, I'm not a complete idiot, but but yeah, it's interesting to think that way. And I guess when you go into a retirement phase, it doesn't mean you're not going to do anything. It just
Right.
means that you're going to change your goals
Mm.
and maybe have to deal with a different type of identity or change how you
Yeah.
identify with yourself,
Yeah.
which is kind of a big deal.
And to sort of go with the, circus metaphor we have going on, I really think about it this way. It's truly like that trapeze artist. And, we see that in cartoons and stuff all the time where you just cannot let go of the one that and you have to in order to catch the other one, right? And
Yeah,
there's that moment where, you're like
in
stretched
between the
between
two.
both. And you're like, okay, this is clearly not going to work. I have to let go in order to catch the other thing. And yeah, so I definitely think about it in those terms. Like, it is really hard to completely, as humans, we're so designed to want to create the certain soft landing, right?
Mhm,
Like, I'm not gonna leave the relationship with this guy until I have another relation until I'm already like, I know where I'm going, right? How many
mhm.
times, especially have you seen young women, um, I don't know, I guess how many times have we seen it with people that we know where they're in a relationship, but they will not get out of it until they have the next guy lined up, right?
Yeah.
And so it's that desire to have the soft landing sort of figured out already, but the reality is you really just gotta let go of the one swinging trapeze thing to catch the other one. Like,
Yeah, what
there's
is it?
no
Out
other
with the
way.
old, in with the new.
Yeah, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, there's my thoughts on letting go today.
Well, and letting go can be like, it's not necessarily that you're letting go of things that don't matter in general, but maybe they no longer are of so much importance to you.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
need to find a way. And that's kind of almost like allowing, like you said, allowing what's next to happen and
Yeah.
being open to change and maybe even open to manifesting what's next for you. And you can actively do that, or you can just be like, okay, universe, bring it on.
Right. Right?
Yeah,
Mm.
that's
Hmm.
interesting. I really love that whole
line of thinking.
Mm.
Especially since I did go through that in
Yeah,
a
you
big
did. I
way.
mean, you're like a classic example, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole soft landing thing, yeah, I held on to that job quite a long time before.
Mhm.
Longer than I probably wanted to, and in the end I knew that it wasn't serving either of us, and
Yeah.
I didn't want to, I didn't want it to be negative in the end. So
Yeah.
I did finally make a clean break, but it was kind of hard because it's a safety net.
Yeah.
Our amygdala is always trying to keep us safe. So
Yeah.
whenever I think about quitting that job, I would get like stomach, flutters, and I couldn't sleep, and my heart would palpitate, and I'd get all anxious. And
Little lizard brain.
yeah, that was a lizard brain going, "Oh my God, what are you doing? You're
Yeah.
crazy. Like, you can't do this. I'm trying to protect you."
Pay attention. Okay,
Yeah.
Amy, there you go. What do you got?
Well, I should have gone first because I can't follow that.
Of course you can, because you're going to.
Seriously. Like, I'm listening to you being all eloquent, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just, I feel like for me, the whole not my circus, not my monkeys, and letting go is like more of Eric's. We've talked about Eric on here
Mhm.
before, and
Yeah.
his you can't make everybody happy, and don't worry about shit you can't
You can't
fix.
fix.
Um, that was kind of where I went with all of this, like more so on the, you're not going to make everybody believe what you believe. Everybody isn't going to do everything like you do it. And I feel like the older I get, the more I'm like, well, okay, whatever, do your thing. Like, again, not my circus, not my monkeys. Like, that sucks for you, but I'm just going to keep on going and doing my thing. So I kind of just thinking of the topic came about it from that
Mhm.
standpoint, and like letting go of like, what does it matter if that person
Mhm.
doesn't think the same thing that you do or do something the same way you do? Like, as long as it doesn't affect your life, roll on, be done with it. Like, don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've made this statement. Michelle's probably heard me say this before, but like, I only have so much energy,
Mm.
and I'm not going to waste it on stuff that I can't fix or do something about, or that it
Mhm.
doesn't really matter. I don't know.
That's great. I love that comment right there. Like,
Yep.
yeah, because you're right. Energy is a limited resource. Our
Mhm.
personal energy is a limited resource. So why do you want to waste it on things that you can't control or change?
Yeah.
Mm.
Do you guys ever read any of the like the Stoic stuff, like the Stoic philosophy and all of that? Or any of
That's
those?
all the Marcus Aurelius and
Marcus
all
Aurelius.
of that. I think
Mhm.
you had mentioned that years ago.
Yeah.
You did the Daily Stoic. Do you still do
Mhm.
that?
I haven't for a while, but every once in a while, like, I'll just bust out something, or I'll see some sort of something written, or I have like the
Mhm.
daily, it's just like a daily
Yep.
reading or whatever. And I haven't done it much lately. But that is definitely a way, like, if you can, and I wish had I thought about it before now, I should have pulled up some stuff in there, but like, if you think about stuff the way that the Stoics do, you're just like, okay,
Well, so for people who might not know what that philosophy is, can you give us, and honestly, I had not heard of it, and I've heard of Marcus Aurelius, but can you give us like a summary, like your in your words, obviously.
yeah, it's gonna have to be in my words because it's not gonna be fancy.
Yeah, please don't fancy it up.
So, like, I guess the big thing is like, truly, don't worry about shit you can't fix. Again, I'm not
Mhm.
gonna make it very eloquent, but the only thing you can control is the way that
Yourself.
you think about something and yourself. Like, you can't
Mm,
control you can't control the weather, you can't control what anybody else does. You can't control, I hate to go down this road because I don't want to get into the politics, but like, you can't control who won the election. You can't control who has what beliefs. You can't control anything. Like, you may want to think that you have control over it, but let's face it, people, you don't. So the only thing that you have control over is your own mindset and how you react to a situation.
mm,
You can't control anybody else. So yeah, that's kind of I was trying to see if there was like any sort of
like a definition.
thing. Yeah.
But but really to me, that's like the most important part, even if that's not, that's your version of it, but that makes so much sense to me because really, like, all of us who are in any kind of a wellness space, especially right now, like you said, not to get political, but we all know that there is a lot of differing views out there. And it was rough back and forth for a lot of people. And my number one thing is, if your side wins, don't gloat. first of all, that doesn't make anybody happy. And number two, remember, you did what you could do as a voter. Hopefully you voted. And that's all you can do. Like Amy said, you can't control the outcome beyond what your actions were, which was voting. Perhaps you donated, perhaps you had a yard sign or whatever you did. But beyond that, it is out of your control. And we have to, I think, really focus on what we personally think and do. And I'm not talking about your emotions. Emotions are real and they're all okay. It doesn't matter what comes up for you. You can be super pissed off and angry and hurt and devastated and scared or whatever you want to be, and that's okay. But it's what you do and how your words come out and your reactions that matter. And you really need to protect yourself and protect the people that you love with some kind of positive view. And don't feed yourself all the news. Like, that's just bad.
Yeah. So just, I think this is Wikipedia, but it
I love
says,
Wikipedia.
Stoicism teaches the development of self-control and fortitude as a means of overcoming destructive emotions. The philosophy holds that becoming a clear and unbiased thinker allows one to understand the universal reason.
That's good.
But yeah, I think and then it talks about be free from anger, envy, and jealousy. But yeah, just that whole thing. And like, the only reason I'm trying to think of like some of the things that I've heard, and now I'm not doing a very good job at all of explaining this, but just like, your emotions to something is because you chose to have those emotions towards it, so.
Well, it's like the good, bad thing, right? Like, we give the meaning to the thing or the event. So okay, not to get political, but the election, right? Right. So
Should've never brought that up.
Each individual person gives, for some people, they're like, yay, that was great. For other people, they're like, oh my God, that was the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
And so we bring the meaning to the event, to even like, think about food, right? So we bring the meaning to what we're eating. Like, is it a good meal? Is it a bad meal? Is it, so yeah. Anyway.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
Amy.
I agree with all that. The only thing I have a little different view on is emotions in general, because I have come to learn from just some of the teachings and some courses and studies I've done that emotions aren't good or bad. Like,
Exactly,
we don't
right?
need to
There is
label the
no,
emotions. Emotions are there and it's part of being human and we're going to feel them, but how we react to those feelings is what matters. And that sounds like the same thing, Amy. It's just a different semantics.
like we bring the meaning to the emotion, right?
Like,
Do you know
if
what
we feel jealousy, how do we use, how do we react to that? Maybe what we do is we do a little gratitude practice and we go like, oh, and immediately that, rather than, labeling like, oh, that's a bad emotion that I'm having.
Exactly.
It's more like, okay, I looked at that person's brand new spanking new car that's all fancy and I thought, dang it, my bumper's a mess and I got to get it fixed. If you stop yourself and say, I'm not going to think that way, I'm going to think like, you know what? I love my car. It's old, but I freaking love that car. I've had it forever and I'm attached to it. I don't know that I'd want to give it up right now. I don't know. Just like being grateful for little things can counteract what we tend to term negative emotions.
Yeah. And I found, because they do a post or whatever each day on the Daily Stoic, and these are just some of the things. It's like we suffer more in imagination than in reality.
Totally.
You are hurt the moment you believe yourself to be. It's not that we have a short time to live, but we waste a lot of it.
Yeah.
This one I really like. You always have the option of having no opinion.
That's me a lot of times.
The best revenge is to not be like your enemy. Yeah. All cruelty springs from weakness. It's not things that upset us, it's our judgment about things.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just that kind of thing, again, just let it go. Don't.
Yeah. I love that.
And again, sometimes I'm way better at that than others.
Both of you. I just love what you all brought to the table.
Michelle was way more eloquent. It's like,
I don't think so. You're good.
She's a writer.
Yeah, she is. I'm just
that doesn't write.
Get over it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Well, you guys are way deeper than I was thinking with this, because I really was looking at it as like, learning to pick your battles or let the small stuff go. Or I have a longtime friend who used to have this saying that I used to love when one of us would ruminate on something, especially something silly that we couldn't control. She would look at us and she'd like put her hands on our shoulders and say, "Put it in a bubble and let it go."
I heard
And I
you say
always
that.
thought that was the cutest thing. And I would visually, if you visualize that and you do that, you're like, okay, mentally, I'm putting this in a bubble and I'm just sending it up and letting it go. But yeah, I like all that. I mean, and I think it
Yeah.
is important as we go through the holidays. I mean, we are going to be all together with people that we're not normally together with, and there will be different opinions, and there will be things beyond our control. There always is. And that might even be like a flat tire on the way to an event, and then you're late, and, rather than getting mad and upset at your partner because maybe they didn't check the air or whatever, who knows, but I feel like that's where things get blown up, is when
Yeah.
something happens beyond your control, but you start looking for like, how could we have prevented this? Or what if?
Yeah.
I feel like we need to sometimes let go of the what if and say, this is what is, and focus on that moment, knowing that this moment is not going to be here very long. And then we'll be
Well,
moving on to the next moment.
isn't it, boy, and I hope I don't get this wrong, and this might be Buddhism. So Lara, maybe this is sort of a yoga thing. But that all suffering comes from wanting things to be different than they are.
Yes, that's very much in yogic tradition, but I think it is Buddhism. But yeah, that's another one. I love that philosophy or that thought process.
That always made so much sense to me. Like, I have a really difficult time living that, but I don't have any trouble believing that,
Yeah,
right?
it's
If that
hard.
makes sense, right? Like, there's so much truth in that. And yet I'm like, yeah, okay, that just sounds so easy.
Yeah, yeah.
Just,
But I mean, it
so
is
truthful.
all in how you think about things.
Yeah.
And so that being said, there's also a saying that you create your own reality. And that goes hand in hand. And I truly believe that you do create your own reality with how you think, and what you
Yeah,
put out into the world.
so okay, so I have a question, because Lara's obviously way more elevated in her thinking than I am, or
Oh,
her
I
living,
don't
or
think
something.
so.
Notice she said Lara, not Amy.
I call
Yeah,
bullshit.
Amy's, no, cancel that.
Amy's
That
I
is
think I
not
might have
true.
to call bull on that.
But here's my thought, and then Amy, tell me what you think, Amy. So I completely lost my train of thought. What did I want to say? Shoot.
Is that what you were saying?
Yes, I think you're much more enlightened than I am.
Well,
Oh,
it's a work.
shoot.
It's always a work in progress. I'll
I'll
never
have
be.
to, if it'll come back to me. Move on without me.
Okay,
Never
we'll
mind.
move on.
I
We'll move
completely
on.
forgot what I was going to say. It was such a
Funny.
good thought, too. I'm
Well,
so
I like
annoyed
that
now.
we turned it around to yoga. I always like when that happens, yoga
Yes.
and meditation, because it is all that. That's all. That's the reason you meditate and do yoga. And really, I mean, it's not just for stretching and trying to sleep better, or opening your hips and all that we do it for. But it's definitely a lot for the changing the way you think. And it's a very hard thing. It's not easy by any means. And I read a quote by Eckhart Tolle today, and I can't remember it exactly, but it was something to the effect of, the minute that you notice, or the moment you notice that your thoughts are intruding or something, then you are present. The fact that you noticed your mind was wandering somewhere means that you are present in that moment, and that's your opportunity right there, is to take it away from these distracting thoughts and back onto whatever it is you're focused on. But that's not the quote, obviously.
First of all, I love him, and probably the power of now, was the power of now, like, what was A New Earth.
Yeah, A New Earth.
A New Earth was, I think, was the first one of his books I read. Yeah, truly incredible. Like, that's a little mind bendy stuff. Like, that's mind bendy stuff.
Yeah.
But what I had meant to say when I, forgot where I was going, is if I lived alone in a bubble, like, all of this stuff like I'm all in. Like things, if you're alone and like you do something stupid, like hurt yourself or something dumb, like it's so easy to be like, okay, I created this. I'm just gonna, it is what it is, and I'm gonna move on from here. Where I get hung up is all these other people around me. Like I think that is so hard,
Saying those other
right?
people.
You know what I mean?
Sorry,
Like,
Bill.
Yeah.
love you, Bill. But it's so much harder when it's other people who are not, um, who don't operate in this way, right? So they don't have any frame of reference for how to do that, right? And are not open to having that conversation, right? Like they don't
Yeah.
want to hear it. And so I find that super challenging. Any suggestions? Like, what do you do with that, Lara? Like, what do you do with that?
I
Like, what
mean,
does
I will
Buddha
say
say about that?
it's challenging. You're right. And I have to think that I'm lucky because my circle of people have kind of developed, and because of the business I'm in the wellness world,
Mm,
it seems like I have more of the people, like thinking people in my circle
mm,
now.
yeah.
It's like attracts like, and I have more people in my circle now that think that way than don't. But that's
Mm,
not to say that, they have their bad moments, or like my partner, he
mm.
can sometimes, from what I see, like go down the negative path in thinking, and I'm just like, what? No, you got to manifest your own destiny, like, and also I have kids, and I try to
Yeah,
instill thoughts like that in them, but they're young, and this did not come overnight. I mean,
right?
I didn't think this way when I was under 30 or even in my 30s. It probably wasn't until I was in my 40s that I started to get it a little more. And after a lot of repetition and yoga teacher training and all of that. So, like, the whole idea that it is a practice means that you're never going to be perfect at it, and you're never going to be finished with the practice.
Yeah.
And so it's just that sometimes it's a harder practice. Like, I'm sure there's some days Amy gets up and she's like, woohoo, I'm going to run 8 miles. And then there's other days where she gets up and she's like, oh, hell no, I do not want to get out of bed. I'm not going anywhere. But she does still do it. But it's a harder practice those days.
Yeah.
Just like if Amy surrounded herself, and I'm using Amy just because she's so quiet, but if Amy surrounded herself with
Because I
people
got
who
nothing.
hated running
That's
and hated working out and didn't want to eat healthy, she would have a way harder time.
Oh, I wouldn't surround myself with those people. I
Yeah,
just get
but
rid of them.
sometimes you can't help it. Like, you can't help being with people, and even people that you might love, that just don't share your thinking. And then
Yeah.
you just have to let it go. That's when the let it go principle is most
There we
important.
go. I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I know. So there's this thing in yoga called letting go of the outcome. And that's not
Oh,
just yoga.
Mm.
But
yeah.
that was probably the thing I struggled with the most. And they teach you that about teaching, because when you teach a class, you can only guide them. You can't,
Get their end result for
yeah, and
them.
you don't
The
want
same
to
way with
force them into
coaching, right?
anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
you want it to
Yeah.
be, you want them to be comfortable, and I teach in a trauma informed style, which means you definitely, aren't going to be like forcing them to do anything. If they want to lay on their mats with their face down the whole class, it's perfectly okay. But you also like can make subtle suggestions over and over and over in a nice way, and without calling names out. But sometimes people just don't get it. Or maybe they are just following their inner guidance in that moment. And that's the way I have to choose to look at it. And say, like, that person is following their inner guidance, and good
It
for
says
them,
to lay
because
face
they are
down.
smart
Yeah.
enough to do that.
Yeah.
And let go of the
No
outcome.
movement.
If they never come back, they never come back. That's not my problem. Not my circus, not my
Not my
monkey.
monkeys. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a big thing, when you go through coach training, right? Like you can do all your, you can be the best coach. You have zero control over the outcome or what the person's actually hearing, what they're taking away, how it's going to, and also the thing that is sort of a little, meh, meh, but you never know what seed you plant with somebody that the result, I mean, it might be 5 years from
Yeah.
when you have the initial. Amy and I talk about this a little bit on the, fitness and wellness side. Like, you can work with somebody and plant the seed and you're like, "Okay, well, they, I never heard from them again, and oh, well, I hope that'll,"
Yeah.
and then you find out 5 years later that because of that interaction, they eventually, went down this path because of something you said or did, or, help that you offered. So that not being attached to the outcome, yeah, I love that. I've always
Yeah.
thought, yeah, again, easier to say than to do, especially in our world. Like in the world today, it feels, especially if you work in like the world of work, um, everything's attached to a freaking outcome,
Well,
right? Like,
that's true.
what are your numbers this month? Or, how many of this did you do? Or how many, so for the person not to be attached to the outcome when the corporation is very clearly attached to the outcome, that's another
Yeah.
really big
Well, and
mind-bendy conversation. Yeah.
that's an interesting way to look at it too, because it would seem that companies might get better performance from their employees if they also didn't, maybe not, I mean, they can't not be focused on some outcome, but
Mm.
maybe if the goal wasn't, like here's the salesperson and over here is the money, maybe
Yep.
if there was some different, outcome on the way, like educate your customers and
Yep.
then they will just naturally want to buy from you. Those kinds of things, which I think sales has taken that turn anyways.
It has, yeah.
But
Well, yes, and yeah, yes, but I'm trying
But
to
yeah,
think of,
you're still
yeah,
as a salesperson, and this is why we
yeah,
burn out sometimes
yeah,
in sales.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
still ultimately responsible for the bottom line, and the better
yeah.
you do, the more you're expected to
Yeah.
do the next year.
Right. And Amy, I don't know, on the sports side, like if you're an athlete, man, it's all tied to, what's that saying? Second place is the first loser, right? Like it's
Take
all
that with you in your next run.
right? Like it's all tied
Well,
to outcome.
first place. Yeah, I'm first place loser every time then.
Well
Well,
done.
not even second. Yeah, I can't even say second place. Yeah,
Yeah, so what
a-
so
and
yeah.
that's why, like, we had Jackie Wilson, my running coach,
Mhm.
on here. Like when we before like big races and stuff, we'll talk about like outcome goals, process goals. Like what do you like? You can't. It can't just be win because like, especially when you're at a race with freaking 30,000 people,
Right.
the chances of that happening are slim to none. Yeah. So you
So
just have to.
is it more about like, maybe like a performance based, like how you performed the last time, like so it's again, it's like maybe a practice, like you're trying to fine tune some area of your performance.
Yeah.
Or your
Yeah.
personal best or whatever.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and in even that, like, and especially in the ultra world, like, even in that, it's really hard to do because the courses are so different. Like, one might be flat and one might be really hilly
Mm.
and one might be really rocky. And so, yeah, I think you just have to kind of
Are there like
set.
mindset goals that you set for yourself? Like, okay, this is more about how I want to feel during this race than maybe my end result performance.
Yeah, and like, well, long story, but I ended up not doing the 24-hour run then. But like, I mean, literally up until a couple of days before, I had planned to do that race. And so we had kind of set up like the goal was there was like an A, B, and C goal sort of thing. Like A was kind of the reach for mileage during those 24 hours. B was like the next point, and C was like do not sit down. Like that, I mean, that seriously was the like just keep moving was the only
Yeah.
was the goal. And so like I feel like unless my body totally gave up, like I had some control over that.
Mhm.
So yeah, and then D was make friends and have fun.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think you kind of have to run the gamut because there's so much of that, and even you listen to like some of the CrossFit podcasts and listen to some of those coaches and stuff talk. Like you can't control who wins the CrossFit games.
Mm.
You know, like all you can do is train to the best of your ability, and because you don't know what the workouts are going to be. You just don't know. So if your self-worth is tied only to winning, like
Winning.
that's a problem because you can't
Yeah.
control that.
So in a way that is kind of like non-attachment to outcome
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
Or non-attachment to that outcome,
Yeah,
Mhm.
right?
specific outcome.
Yeah. Interesting. You
Yeah,
know
and it's
hmm,
again, it keeps coming back to focusing on the things you can control and not
mhm.
on the things you can't.
Mhm.
So this is kind of a sideways thought. So talking about this, and I'm not on social media in any real way, right? So for those folks that are, I think about like the kids on TikTok and Instagram and all the influencers and all of that stuff. Like when I'm thinking about having an attachment to an outcome, like if you see certain images that are the quote unquote desired images, like this is what, you want to be like this person or something like that. I wonder how attached to that outcome people get. Like if you're, following somebody and, they have the car, or it looks like, right? Because it's, who knows, right? They have the car and the house and the clothing and the jewelry and the look, and and if that becomes your desired outcome, like this is your, right, like how messed up that can make you.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to our last podcast, which is perfectionism.
Yeah.
And how when you see people you perceive to be perfect, it can make you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same kind of theory. Like, and that's one thing I think people have to be aware of if they're, getting sucked into social media, and even people my age and,
Yeah.
adults do sometimes go down that rabbit hole but I think we're all very well versed in the language of like, this is not, realistic, but a lot of younger people might not be. And I think it's kind of a slippery slope, with how much you consume. And maybe that's the key, is just don't consume it. And also don't follow people. If you're watching somebody and you just feel bad about yourself, why are you following that person?
It's an interesting thing,
Yeah.
I just,
What's the there's some sort of saying like to the effect of like, don't compare your whatever to someone else's highlight reel, but I can't
right.
I forget
Yeah.
Right.
what
Your real life maybe to someone
yeah,
else's
it's like
highlight reel.
something to that effect, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
My daughter's gonna kill me because sometimes she listens to this, but when she was younger, and granted now she's adult, full-time job, go-getter, very busy lady. She does not have time to sit and scroll all day long. But when she was a little younger, she'd get caught up in a few. And she had this favorite couple, and I cannot remember their names other than I think the girl's name was Aspen. And Aspen and such, whoever he was, I don't know, Aspen and Maple. They were like this cute little super young like couple, and they lived like in, who knows, maybe Aspen, and they were driving around in their like super fancy car, and you could see their house was beautiful and it was all decorated, and they did all these cutesy things together, and I'm like, oh Lord, like this is setting my child up for some big scary failures in life.
Oh God.
And I think she finally quit following them. I don't even know what happened. They probably got overshadowed by some other cutesy little Instagram couple. I don't know, but
by Willow and Pine.
yeah, Willow and Pine, right? Like they're even
Very
better.
good, Amy. That was a good one.
But I was like, yeah, I'm glad she doesn't watch them anymore. I'll have to, next time I talk to her, I'll have to ask her who the Instagram couple is these days. And it also reminds me, and this is totally off subject, but
I love it.
so when I get sucked into social media, which I do, and sometimes it's just brain candy for me, I get the crazy cat videos because that's what makes me laugh. And once you look at one, they're going to give you hundreds. And there's this one where a guy is talking to these cats. There's like 4 or 5 of them, and they're all just sitting around like licking their paws and like not looking at the camera. And he's like asking them questions. He's like, the last time we saw you guys, you were in Aspen skiing, and so what has been happening since? And they're like, and then it's all a voice, obviously somebody else's voice, and one of them goes, we're just influencers, and the cat's like looking away, and it's so realistic, and it cracks me up every time I see it. So yeah,
I don't know what just maybe like it's like the crazy memories that like pop up when somebody starts talking. But when you were talking about the couple, do you remember who it was, like Nick Lachey and somebody? They had a show on like
I know that
MTV or
show.
something. What was it?
So this is another thing you might not know about me, but another brain candy for me is watching those dating shows. I am like fascinated by them. And that show, and I forget her name, Nick Lachey, and I don't know.
real pretty.
Was it Jessica Simpson? Was that who he was with?
No, well, it might have been a long time ago, but it's not who he's with now. His wife.
Nope.
It's not her.
Yeah,
But they have
had
a show called Love is Blind, and that's why it's fascinating, because it's literally people who sit in pods and do not see each other, and they're supposed to not talk about their looks either, and they just talk. They sit and talk, they eat meals together, they kind of date through these walls. And the theory is that you're supposed to find someone that you mesh with, and then you feel compelled to make a proposal, and it's like weeks long process, so it's not very long.
Oh my gosh.
And in the end, there's like 3 or 4 that get engaged. And by the very end, there's like 2 maybe that make it and actually get married and seem happy. But it's fascinating, and it's super interesting. And there's some drama.
I'm shocked. Newlyweds, Nick and Jessica. It was Jessica Simpson.
Oh, well, it's not her anymore.
This was no. That's what I mean. Like, they had this show, and it was like all this like like all this like cutesy stuff, and let's do this. This is so fun. And we have this house, and we have these cars, and all this stuff. And I think they're like divorced. That was kind of the point of
I know.
bringing that up.
Now he's got this show with his current wife. So that's
it was from 2003 to 2005.
That's super interesting. Now I'm gonna have to look up his wife, just because I feel bad that I didn't.
Yeah, that was the whole point of my thing, is like, they're a train wreck too.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, everybody you see, in those situations.
Stacey Snider. Oh no,
and I don't know why it's not coming up very. No. She seems like a very nice woman.
I'm sure.
We need Wikipedia. Where's Wikipedia when we need it? By the way, I do donate to Wikipedia because I use it a lot. Well, now we're just dead. We're doing this thing while we're looking it up, so it'll have to come to us later. Nick Lachey and his beautiful current wife have a show called Love is Blind, and it has nothing to do with our topic today at all.
Well, it kind of does, right? Letting go, like he managed to let go of one for the other. So
that is true.
Letting go there. Like he wasn't too attached to that outcome.
Talking about in transitions, there you go.
Right?
Oh, that's very funny, but
wow. We digress.
We did go off on a tangent there, a little social media
went around the world. Well, I just find, because it's such a big piece of the world now, like I really always do wonder, any topic that you talk about, right, whatever it is so impacted by how people get their images and information now. And we just don't have a real frame of reference for what the long-term effects of that are. We're just starting to have generations that are coming through that has been their, how they get their information.
Yeah, that is true. That it's going to take some more time, and they already are finding out that there's some real detrimental, effects of too much social media on younger people. So thankfully I don't have kids that are that age anymore, and they seem to have come through the social media thing. That's fine. Okay. But I would worry if I had younger kids, because it's so much more prevalent now. But I also want to think, like, so again, this kind of goes back to perfection, which I think goes hand in hand with sometimes some of the letting go stuff, maybe not the transition stuff. But I started watching this documentary on Martha Stewart, and there was a whole part I haven't finished it, but there's a whole part in the documentary where they talk about how she had this, obviously everybody thought she was perfect, and she had this magazine, and I didn't think I knew this. She was the first self-made woman billionaire back in the 90s, which was, that's a huge.
She had an empire, man.
Yeah, she definitely had this huge empire built. In the meantime, her marriage was falling apart, and, she felt very much like, maybe an imposter in some ways. She's interviewed a lot, and she really comes across as this very strong-willed.
She's in her 80s now.
I don't know how old she is, but she does not look.
I think she's 80.
I have to Google.
She looks really good, and she's super well spoken, but she's also very set. Like, she's like, I made this happen. I love that.
And she still works, and she was interviewed by
83.
By Maria Shriver.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I'm actually shocked. Like, she is
You got to watch the documentary. But there's a part where they talk about how when her magazine got really big, women were lining up in her books and all this, but there was this whole like generation, I guess, of women who were like working women, and they felt kind of betrayed because she appeared to have it all, and they were like, we can't do that. It's not realistic, it's unreachable. And her theory was, no, it's not. I'm trying to show you how to get there. But she just had this like work ethic and ability, like,
And
I don't
still
know.
does. I
It
mean,
still
and the
does.
ability to recreate her. I mean, she went to prison for goodness sakes,
I
right? Like,
know.
so she,
She
she was,
is a
talk
true
about a
pioneer.
stoic. She was just like, you know what? She didn't whine. She didn't carry on. She was just like, you know what? I'm just going to jail and I'm going to get this over with. And
Yeah.
whatever, people, it'll all be fine.
Yeah.
I
She
have
just
to
kept
say,
continuing to
I
create.
never, like, she was never my thing because, I'm not somebody who is really good at all the let's decorate the house stuff. But like, that's clearly not my superpower. But I really admired, it sounds weird, but I admired how she handled her little blip there. And yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
holy crap, because you see, well, cancel that. But anyway, I admired how she handled that. I'm not
Yeah,
going to
she
go
really
down
is a
that road.
force. Like I didn't know a lot of the stuff in the documentary about her. I didn't know she was a stockbroker.
Yep.
That was her first like thing, and she was like the first woman ever even on Wall Street. Like what? Like some crazy stuff. But it didn't come without its cost. I mean, she
Exactly.
definitely had a lot of issues too.
Yeah.
But her attitude is what I liked. Is she's
Yeah.
still kicking. She's out
I
there.
like her attitude about work as you age. I guess because, I'm aging. And I forget, I think it was Maria Shriver who did a bunch of interviews. Oh God, I guess it was a couple of years ago, and she was interviewing folks, and it was all around longevity and all of
Mm,
that. And Martha Stewart was like a take no prisoners kind of interview. She was like,
yes.
you know what? This idea that you can't do stuff that's just, ridiculous. She has that, she was doing the Sketcher ads with Snoop Dogg or whatever,
I know this whole like
right?
this
Like,
thing with her and Snoop Dogg. Just like I'm like,
right?
what is going on? He's another one. I mean, that again, reinventing himself over and
Yeah,
over. He's on is it The Voice? He's like
I
one of
think so.
those
Yeah.
voice guys, and now he's hanging out with Martha Stewart on Martha's Vineyard. No, I guess it's the Hamptons. I don't know, but I'm just
But
like. It's
yeah,
kind of, if you look at it on one level, it's inspirational. And like you
yeah,
said, letting go of your old life and moving into
yeah.
something new, like those are great examples of that.
Yeah,
That
and just
it's
your
okay.
preconceived ideas of what that next phase looks like.
Yeah.
Like, not
Yeah, and that
wait.
being all said, it's
Yeah,
also okay, in my opinion, to just say, I'm letting go of that crazy schedule and getting up
yeah,
early and
yeah,
having to be at a certain place and demands and
yeah,
pressure, and I am going to create my own inner retreat.
yep.
And
Every
I think
day. That's
that's
my
a great
plan.
thing. Yes. Yeah.
My own
Yeah.
little Zen garden with the little rake. I'm gonna have a little bonsai tree, and I'm gonna have a little rake, and that's what I'm gonna do every day. No,
Yeah.
only kidding.
And
But
there's no,
maybe a little.
but you don't have to be kidding. That's
No, I'm
perfectly
like, maybe a
legit.
little.
That's total just legitimacy. Yeah, I love it. It's
Oh,
totally
anyway.
good. I'm a big fan of manifestation practices, which is
Mm.
when you sit and meditate and develop what you want by very, very focused steps. And there's a lot of good courses on it. I would never lead one, but I have listened to a
Why
bunch of.
not? I think you should lead one.
Ugh,
Yes. Oh,
I
how
don't,
fun
I
would
don't know if
that
that's
be?
really for me, but
Oh no, Lara.
But I have
Okay.
listened to a lot, and I love those kinds of things.
Mhm.
And I always find it fascinating that when I go through the process, it's usually because
Mm.
I'm trying to either, figure something out or figure out what to do next or whatever. And every time I do it, I'll be going through the process and it'll immediately become clear to me
Mhm.
what I need to do,
You
even
next.
if it's just what's my next step.
Yeah.
And that's not coming from anybody else. That's just totally from inside.
Yeah. Well, it's just
whatever you
getting
want to
still
call it.
and quiet enough, right? Like
Yes.
that's really, yeah, letting go of all to get back to sort of our topic, letting go of all the outside noise and letting go of all of that.
Yeah, because your inner self knows, like there's a
Yeah.
lot of knowledge within, and we
Yeah.
just don't listen to it a lot of times. Because you're right, we're listening to all the outside noise. Yeah. I mean, how many you guys have probably done a lot of stuff based on intuition, you know? Like you don't think about it that way, but you probably have. Most people probably have and just don't realize it. That's my theory. I'm sticking to it.
Well, ladies, this was a good one.
Yeah, I don't know. Any last words? Amy, you're the quiet one today.
I know. I'm just kind of taking it all in. I'm just
What are
like,
you letting go of, Amy?
I don't know. Just again, whatever everybody else is doing, do your thing. Whatever you want to do. Yeah.
I like it.
All right.
Well, and yeah, so I guess we'll wrap it up. I mean, we probably have talked a long time, so we
Yeah.
never really realize it, but yeah, so thanks for listening once again. We are going to now manifest the most perfect chant we've ever done by focusing on not saying 1, 2, 3 too quietly, because that seems to be what throws us off.
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
And we're just gonna throw it out there. Don't go slow. We got to do it
Okay.
fast.
Okay.
Monkey chatter. Who you hang with matters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it
Ready?
like
Ready?
that. Okay. Thanks,
Okay.
everybody. Ready?
What?
Wow.
Do what you just did, Amy, because that'll be good. Go ahead, do
All right,
that.
I'm gonna do monkey chatter. Who you
Monkey chatter,
hang
who
with
you hang
matters.
with matters. Monkey chatter,
Monkey chatter.
who you hang with matters.
Monkey chatter. Who
Who
you hang
hang
with
with
matters.
matters. That was
Monkey
pretty
chatter.
good. That's good.
I don't know about
Okay,
that.
wrap this up. Okay.
Okay, we're done.
Peace out, everybody.
Peace out, everybody.